Hi, I'm Esperanza Soriano McCrary. I'm the Parent Engagement Coordinator for the Clarksville-Montgomery County School System. And on this episode of Engage TV, I'm joined by Mr. Michael Waldridge, science teacher at West Creek Middle School. And he's going to discuss the Parent-Teacher Conference. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Parent-Teacher Conference, we're familiar with it. Teacher, parent, student usually sitting alongside, having discussion about that student's progress. What's changing?
The big change is we're moving away from the traditional where the teacher is directing the whole conference with the parent, and usually the child's in the room and they are just a quiet person basically being talked about. And we're moving it towards a more student-centered where the child is taking an active role in their educational results and what they're doing in school.
So is the student making a presentation? What does that look like?
Yeah, and the presentation is directed by the student. The parent they're receiving this presentation, listening through everything. A student will be discussing their overall performance, usually using a tool like a portfolio. They'll show either current student work that they've done or something digital that they have. And then he will discuss what he's done well and what he hasn't done well to both the teacher and the parent. At the end, usually the teacher provides some questions if the parent needs it, to be able to ask additional things to probe their child, to get that other information out of them that they may need to help their child be successful.
When there's something that the student hasn't necessarily done well, how does that discussion take place?
Usually, the discussion is a reflective piece from the student to begin with to spark the conversation where the student actually determines what he has not done well enough to his standards or the teacher's standards, and then reflects on how he can improve on that. Where has he gone wrong? What sort of help he may need to go further, and then set some goals aside to make some improvement on that.
So when the student talks about some of the help that they need to kind of meet those goals and sort of increase those grades, how does the parent fit in there, or is the parent part of that plan to meet that goal?
Usually what happens is the parent is requested by the student for help at a certain point. The student basically sets forward what they've done well or haven't done well, and then they talk about what they need to be able to go to that next level. Part of that self-awareness where it goes, okay, I need from my parents A, B, or C to help me do better in my classes.
And that could be more
It could be more study time, quiet time at home. It could be additional resource. Let me go to the library a little bit more often.
If the parent wants to have more of a private conversation with the teacher about their child's progress, is the student-led parent-teacher conference that time, or should they make a separate appointment with that teacher?
When you're discussing more personal information, either it's behavior or something you want to go more in depth on, student-led conferences is not the apt time to do that. Usually you need to schedule a private conference time, usually sometime throughout the year. You can schedule a different time where you can talk more in detail about that individual student. Student-led, a lot of times you're going to have multiple students inside the room, and there's not a private area in order to have those types of conversations.
Right. So what are some of the benefits in comparison?
I think the biggest benefit out of it with the traditional conference, it's traditionally just the teacher talking, the parent and the student are just receiving. In this case though, the benefit for this as far as the learning progress, it lets the student become more self-aware of what's going on, more in charge of their own educational progress, but it's also a chance to give the teacher more information as well as the parent, because having the full discussion and them explaining what's going on, it kind of broadens out all the different things you can see in that child as far as what's been going on in their education progress. And it actually gives the teacher more insight of where that kid's struggling as they try to explain it themselves. And same thing for the parent. And it brings out different things where maybe the parent or the teacher were not aware of certain situations that came about because he finally was explaining in his own words. Because it's kind of difficult when you're just looking at grades and papers sometimes, and you don't really get that insight of what's going on in that child's head. But when they're actually presenting this stuff, you get a larger picture, and it actually benefits everyone in there to make that child more successful for the year.
This is awesome. I think this has been great. I think, student-led conferences are an exciting time, not just for the student, but for the parent to see the student making the presentation about his or own work. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.